Shilpi Kapoor, BarrierBreak from Mumbai. Well, back in 93 to 95, I was a white hacker working for an American firm sitting in India. One of the days I was on a shift and the boss that I was reporting to didn't get the hacker IP. I got it before him. So I asked him, I said, I'd learned everything on hacking from him. So I asked him, I said, what happened? So he turned around and told me that all the time that I'd known him, he was actually paralyzed. He had met with an accident and he could only use his head to control a computer. And his computer was not working very well, and thus he was not able to do his job. For me, it was a shock that somebody with severe disability like paralysis, and I looked up to him saying that he was one of the best hackers that I had seen. And to be a hacker, you have to be fast. I think that excited me towards thinking that disability was something that I wanted to explore. And he said, Shilpi, why not technology and disability? Why shouldn't that be a space that you will cover? And that got me on the journey. Well, the journey has been a lot of up and down. I started off as a non-profit, teaching computers to the visually impaired. Very earlier on realized that being an NGO was very charity-driven, and I wanted a very different model to it. I wanted a more inclusive model to it, and I wanted a model that was self-sustainable rather than looking at charity. So that's where I started BarrierBreak. And the aim of BarrierBreak is to make technology accessible to people with disabilities by hiring disabled people so as to do the job and to give them access to different types of technology out there. So in that journey, we've had a time where we've had a VC investment by a company called Avishkar. So that was a high for us, that somebody validated our plan. But simultaneously, we've had a lot of lows, like the Indian IT tech companies did not want to accept us, or the healthcare providers that we work with, like low vision aids for visually impaired people. We found that a lot of doctors had no acceptance of these products and no knowledge about these products. So it has been a long and hard journey. But now that we're seeing, the good side of it, I think it's been a good journey so far. So I think till now the approach has been more rehabilitative. Right? It's more about what are we doing for education, what are we doing to rehabilitate people, etc. I think it's time for the focus to change on how do we help people with disabilities to live independently, specifically in the day and age of technology. A very simple example is that today you can control your house using a device. Right? And if you have somebody who has paralysis in your family, you can now yet give them the same independence that they enjoyed before the paralysis. So I think what we're doing is we're just starting off on this journey of building inclusion. Right? We have to move away from saying rehabilitation and education, and we have to look at how technology can make this happen. I think the government having the Accessible India campaign that they've announced is a fabulous step forward to ensure that people with disabilities can be looked at from different angles and just not from an educational rehabilitation perspective. So I yet believe we are far away from actually making it happen, but I think we are at a good start. So I'll give you a simple challenge. We provide lots of different technology, which helps a person live independently. They're not necessarily medical interventions. They're more technology interventions that can help you do something better. Okay? For example, if I can no longer read the fine print of a newspaper, and I read the newspaper every day for 2 hours of my life, would I want to give it up? But can a simple aid like a low vision aid actually help you to continue to do that rather than have to give it up? So the challenge that we face in such spaces is that most of the doctors are not aware about all of the technology out there. They're more interested in the surgery and the medical intervention of it. But for a large number of people with disabilities, medical intervention is no longer going to help them. So how do we bring that difference in place, where we tell them that they can yet live a very fulfilled life, and how do we make that an option for them? So I think that's where the challenge is. Can we get the medical practitioners on board to understanding that beyond medicine, there are other ways for people to be able to live a fulfilled life? Well, actually quite a few. If I just look at it that, most of the time when we talk about people with disabilities, these are not support services that are happening within hospitals. So even something like, most hospitals today have a shop in shops with even just eye care, right? But there are no low vision aids out there. When we go and meet, ENT doctors, we find that they're really not thinking about things like assisted listening devices. The jump is straight to a hearing aid, whereas very often a hearing aid does not necessarily provide. So I think the ask from the doctors is one, to look at the holistic living of a person with disability, right? And to see how they can expand their knowledge and their service offerings so that they can include independent living and day-to-day living in it. So when you are abroad, a lot of these hospitals actually have separate departments to help you integrate into society. I think hospitals need to start to do that in India. They need to look at integration and just not medical aid. Well, we're doing a lot. Just last week we were exhibiting at the AIOC, which is the All India Ophthalmology Conference. In a large conference like that, where everybody's talking about medicine and medical interventions, we were the only organization that was talking about low vision aids. Right? So we go ahead and build awareness with ophthalmologists, optometrists, the same thing with speech therapists, the same thing with ENT. And our aim is really that we need to touch these grounds. I think for a company of our size, one of the biggest challenges has been that to get doctors on board. How do we find them and how do we reach out to them? So things like the All India Ophthalmology Association, things like that, help us reach those kind of scale and people. But we need a good handshake between, us as well as the doctors. That needs to be handled in the long run. Well, I think in my own perspective, disability in India is a lot more stark than in the rest of the world. Because we don't have a lot of the support systems in place to help people with disabilities. So I put it at a map where it's quite difficult to be a disabled person in India. You don't have the same infrastructure, the same support, the same technology that you would get in other parts of the world. So we need to do a lot to make it happen. Having said that, having 100 million people, I think I'm hoping that more and more organizations, whether medical, whether non-medical, will start to look at them as a market and will start to create solutions and services around them. Right? And so I think we will have to start on this journey, even in the healthcare space. So I'll give you a very simple example. If I'm blind and I want to check my diabetes level, my sugar level, how do I go about doing this? Which device is going to talk to me and tell me that this is my current blood sugar level? When are we going to get to a point where we start looking at these things, and when do they become mainstream for us? Right? So I think that's the need of the day. Well, I think somebody this morning mentioned Stephen Hawking, right? And I think that's exemplary, right? Where he has very little movement in most of his body, other than probably a cheek today, and he can manage to communicate through a computer, right? That is the power of technology. I think we need to embrace that. And all of that technology today is available in India in some format or the other. But how do we get it to the right people? Right? So let's say you've had somebody who's had a throat surgery and are no longer being able to talk. Can you give them a communication aid that can help them yet talk and not feel isolated? So I think there's so many such amazing things out there. We'd love to see them actually reach people with disabilities in India and through the doctors. So I think the biggest challenge for most of us in the assistive technology space is that we're not very large companies. We're small companies who are trying to reach a very large, audience, a country the size of India. Right? We, probably have one office or two offices. How do we reach all the rest of India and actually make this available? For example, when you're going to buy a thermometer, as a simple example, you can walk into any store and buy it. But when you go to buy a low vision aid, there are very few people in India who can sell that to you. Right? The problem is we don't get distribution, the same that other channels do have. Until we don't have that distribution network, creating awareness is going to be a challenge because the cost of creating awareness is very high. So I think I want to use this platform to actually reach out to every hospital and every doctor out there and say, write to us, tell us, we'd love to be able to work with your hospitals, with your clinics, to make this awareness happen. But as a single company, it's very difficult for us to do it on our own. I look at a very simple estimate of about 4,500 crores as the kind of support that people with disabilities are going to spend money on to get access to. which I think is a huge market, right? And we've taken a very nominal number where you say that even at just 60% of people with disabilities in India spend about 10,000 rupees on their average expenses around disability. So I think the market is a fabulous market. It includes everything from getting their eye checkups to getting a hearing aid to getting a wheelchair if they so require, or to get a white cane, whatever it is that they require to be able to live independently. The market is a potential for a lot of people to look at, and I hope they do after hearing this. The shape of things to come is going to be interesting, at least from a technology impact. Technology is evolving really fast. Today, we've just worked with an organization called Diabeto, and they've created a device to check your diabetes, but it's hooked into a mobile app, right? And thus we know that the mobile app can be used by a blind person, and we've tested the app to see that it is accessible. So I think the future today is going to be a lot more interesting. You can control your house using your mobile handset, and it can control your lights, your fans, your doors, etc. So I think the future is going to be one which would be very, very interesting, but we need to embrace technology along the way.